What's up guys, my name is Chikamoya and I've been living in Finland for around 3 years now, and only recently have I genuinely been wondering, why is coffee drinking so popular here? I think I figured out this puzzle, but let's find out together. Let's do it. I love coffee. You know, it's gotten to the point where I can't start my day without a nice cup of coffee. I mean, I could, but that day probably won't be as good. But the funny thing is, I'm not the only one who feels this way. You may or you may not know this, but Finland is rated and viewed as one of the biggest, if not the biggest, coffee drinking nation on the planet. The International Association of Coffee has estimated that each person in Finland drinks around 12 kgs of coffee per year. How did Finland get to a point where it drinks so much coffee? And I've been thinking about this and I've done some research, a little bit of research, and I think the best place to start is the history. So let's start right at the beginning. Coffee arrived in Finland in the 17th century via Russia and Sweden. Both countries are very important to Finnish history, but I'm sure I'll dive into that at another point. But even when coffee had arrived, it was more so reserved for the upper class or really wealthy people. And even then, it was drank during celebrations or really important life events. It wasn't until the 18th century that coffee was enjoyed by everyone basically, and it also helped that a lot of people believed that this delicious liquid also helped you with a multitude of different ailments. Yeah, I feel better now. In 1919, as one of its first acts of independence, Finland declared a nationwide prohibition on alcohol. Finland had tried this before, but Russia was like, no. But at this point, Finland was free and they were like, please keep your vodka away from us. We don't want it anymore. And obviously, this impacted the country in a lot of different ways. One of which is that people began to drink a lot more coffee. But this coffee drinking utopia didn't last very long because there was a little thing called, I don't know if you know, World War II? Yeah, that kind of messed a whole bunch of stuff up. During the war, a lot of goods became sparse, as you would expect in a war. Coffee was one of those. In the beginning of the war, each family was allowed a mere 2 bags of coffee for the year. But as time went on, obviously that completely dried up. There was no more coffee in Finland, and the people that were left had to kind of think of different alternatives like beetroot and sugar. That honestly sounds more depressing than the war. Obviously, I'm joking. When the war came to an end, coffee was finally allowed to come back into the country. There's actually an interesting little blurb I read that explained this moment. I'm gonna read it for you now. The year 1946 brought some relief though. Finland was waiting for a ship, SS Heracles, to arrive from Brazil. The captain had one order only, to bring with him as much coffee as possible. When the ship finally returned, the governor of the National Bank, 3 ministers, a film crew, and a crowd of over 1,000 citizens were waiting at the harbor. A chain of police officials was needed to hold the excited crowd back. As the coffee beans were loaded into the trains, the caffeine-deprived people picked every loose bean from the ground to take home with them. A similar cargo of sugar had arrived a year earlier, but it had not attracted nearly as much attention as the cargo of coffee did. The funny thing is I can completely relate. Imagine years of no coffee and just drinking beet juice and other weird shit instead of the real stuff. A couple years after that, the president at the time, his name was, I need to read it, Urho Kekkonen, and he legislated that coffee ought to be lightly roasted. And that's how Finnish people began to drink a lot of lightly roasted coffee. In Finland, the tap water is great quality and drinkable everywhere. It is also extremely soft, meaning that we can make our coffee lighter and still brew it to taste great. In countries with harder water, the coffee needs to be roasted darker to have decent flavor. That in itself is really interesting. It just shows you that Finland is really proud of the resources that they have, and this was an example of that. And I think nowadays people are mixing it up with the type of coffees that are being drank, but the important thing is that Finnish people were allowed to start drinking coffee again. So I think that history of loving coffee has bled into the Finnish culture on quite a deep level. And it's funny that here, people don't really care about big coffee brands like Starbucks. I think here in Helsinki there's maybe one Starbucks that I've seen. For people living here who just want some coffee, they will get it anywhere. And I've personally worked in restaurants and I've seen this firsthand. People will take a coffee wherever they can get it, and coffee is served everywhere. I remember working in a buffet restaurant. The amount of times I had to change these big freaking 10-liter coffee tanks or whatever you call them was insane. If you're enjoying my content, please don't forget to give me a like and subscribe, because it doesn't cost you anything and it really helps me, and it allows me to do this a lot more seriously, which I would love to. Another thing to take into consideration in our quest to find the truth is the weather. The weather plays an important part of the coffee drinking culture. Think about it. It's the 18th of November today. Well, as of filming this right now. And it got dark. It started getting dark from around 3:30 p.m. and it's also starting to get pretty cold. What beverage can you drink that will help you on both fronts, both for the dark and for the cold? Besides alcohol. It's coffee. There's nothing worse than looking outside and it's dark and everything in your body is telling you that you need to go to sleep, but then you look at the time and it is 5 p.m. So what's going to keep you awake? Coffee. What's nice to drink when it's cold outside and you want to be inside and relaxed? Coffee. It just makes perfect sense. And I'm pretty sure some of you watching this, if you are Finnish, have perhaps more of a sentimental reason for drinking coffee. Perhaps when you were young, your parents used to take you ice swimming and afterwards you would drink coffee. You know, it's just integrated in everything. When it starts snowing and I decide to go for a walk in a forest, I'll take a big flask of coffee. And it's just the way things are done. Cold plus dark equals coffee or beer, but that's a different discussion for another time. From what I've personally seen, coffee is drank in almost any situation, whether it's a funeral or a wedding or a baby shower, there will be coffee served somewhere at some point. It's just the way it goes here. And sometimes, or a lot of the time, coffee is served with some sort of sweet bun or a cake or pancakes or something. It's just a thing that people do. And from working here in Finland, I've realized that drinking coffee with some of your co-workers is also a great kind of icebreaker. Feel free to let me know down in the comments if I got something wrong, or if you just want to add on to what I said. Let me know down, and I'll read your comments. At least I try to. If there are any other Finnish facts that you would want me to research and make a video on, let me know down in the comments below. I'll go through and I'll choose a few that I'll make some videos on. Otherwise, if you're watching this, I wish you the best day, evening, wherever you are. I hope that you're safe. Have a blessed day or evening. You are amazing. And maybe make yourself a cup of coffee after watching this. Hit subscribe, leave me a like. You guys are awesome. Cheers for now. Bye.